Chapter 1486. Shirniange quietly patted her hands, trying to control the trembling of her hands. In the end, Qin Sighting suddenly laughed. My hand is injured like this. You're not the one in pain. Why are you trembling? Qin Sighting asked her. Nonsense, because this was Qin Sighting's hand. Shirniange did not speak. After bandaging his hand, she raised his hand and examined it. How is it? Is it comfortable? If it's uncomfortable, I'll wrap it again. Qin Sighting glanced at the hand she was holding, and then at her pained and careful expression. He was not in a hurry to pull his hand back. Instead, he looked at her slightly reddened eyes. After thinking for a moment, he retracted his hand and did not say anything. Shirniange knew that her performance might have been too obvious, because her heart really ached. His hand was injured like this. She quickly packed the medicine box and said, Don't touch water for the next few days. If you don't want to go to the hospital, come to me every day to apply medicine and bandage it. By the way, the weather has been getting hotter recently. It's not good to keep wrapping your hand like this. That's all for today. Tomorrow, I'll go buy some better gauze to prevent the wound from healing. Qin Sighting sat there and did not speak. He only listened to her. When Shirniange ran back to put the medicine box away in her slippers, and then ran back to sit opposite him, he still maintained his posture with one hand on the small bar counter. Seeing her anxious expression, he smiled faintly. If you're not willing to tell me the reason, I won't keep asking you. Shirniange sat opposite him and looked at his left hand, which was wrapped very smoothly. But in the future, if you can't come to school because of something, can you give me a call or send me a text message? I've really been worried all morning. Qin Sighting's handsome brows moved slightly. You're so worried about me? Of course, I've been waiting under the tree every day to enter the school gate with you. This morning, I didn't see you, and I was so anxious. Although I thought it was a little abrupt, I still called you, but you didn't pick up. Later, I couldn't get through to you. Shirniange was very calm about the fact that she was anxious because of him. She had clearly suppressed her emotions yesterday, but at this moment, she could not hold it in. Qin Sighting chuckled and lowered his eyes to look at his own hand. He raised his hand and shook it gently. He smiled and said, You wrapped it well. You're very professional, Dr. Shir. Although she knew that he was teasing her, Shirniange still felt happy because of Qin Sighting's words. Earlier, her heartache because of him also improved slightly. Fortunately, it was only the hand that was injured, and the nerves in the hand were not injured. It was just a superficial injury, and it would heal in a few days. After that, the two of them seemed to have entered a state where there was nothing to talk about. However, Shirniange did not want to ask him when he was leaving. At this moment, Qin Sighting glanced out. She thought that he was planning to leave after wrapping his hand. Her heart was filled with reluctance. She felt sour, but she wanted to keep something. But she found that she could not open her mouth. Could she ask him to stay at her house for a while longer? It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. No one lived in the villas opposite, so from this angle it was dark outside. There was only a row of small street lamps outside the door. There was no one walking around. It was extremely quiet. No matter how bold she was still a girl. She could not say such words. An 18-year-old boy and girl were not as calm as they were when they were adults. They would be curious and expectant, but they would also be nervous and afraid to try. She used a brainless method to continue the topic. Do you want something to drink? Qin Sighting glanced at her. This was a small bar counter, and next to it was a wine cabinet. However, there were only a few bottles of red wine that Uncle Qin had placed here. The alcohol content was not high, and Shirniange usually did not drink it. The other cabinets were empty. Afraid that he would misunderstand, she quickly said, There are all kinds of fruit tea and drinks in the fridge. By the way, the fruit tea was made by Auntie Xiang. I brought it to school for you to drink. I remember that you liked it. She often came to make it. After 2 or 3 days in the fridge, the taste is even better than the first day. Do you want another cup? Perhaps it was because Qin Sighting enjoyed the quiet atmosphere of such a night, that he was not in a hurry to leave. He only looked at her expectant gaze and said, All right, try it. At the very least, there was still time to taste the fruit tea. That meant he was not in a hurry to leave. Shirnianj immediately got up with a smile and rushed into the kitchen to open the fridge to make the fruit tea. When she was in the kitchen, she recalled the bowl of onion oil noodles that Qin Sighting had made last time. In an instant, she felt that she was locked in a bubble of happiness and did not want to go out at all. When she finished making the fruit tea and brought it out, she saw that Qin Sighting was still sitting there, but there was a book by his hand. It was the medical books she had brought back from the provincial library yesterday. She was not at home during the day. Auntie Xiang had probably come and helped her tidy up the house. She tidied up the books under the sofa and placed them on the small bar counter. Although she knew that he was just casually picking them up to take a look, Shirnian's heart skipped a few beats. The feeling of being touched by the person she liked was really wonderful. She walked over with the fruit tea and gently placed the cup by his side. "Try it." Qin Sighting's gaze landed on the title page of the medical book. He did not raise his head, nor did she rush him. She sat back down opposite him and held the cup to drink alone. She didn't know what he was looking at. It seemed like he had been looking at the words on the title page. There weren't many words. She had read it yesterday. On the title page of the book were the last words of a famous German doctor who had dedicated his life to the operating table. It could be considered the preface of the book. That German doctor had many achievements and accomplishments in the history of medicine in recent years. He could be considered one of Shirnian's idols. However, he had passed away a few years ago. This book was published more than 10 years ago. Right now it was just a reprinted version. Whether it was the previous version or the current reprinted version, she had read them all, so she knew what he was reading now. Qin Sighting seemed to be reading very seriously. As Shirnianj drank the fruit tea, she raised her eyes to look at him. She saw that he had finally put down the book, but he did not return it to its original position. Instead, he shifted his gaze away from the book and looked at her. "Can I take this book back to read?" Chapter 1487. "Ah, this book?" Shirnianj was stunned. "This book, is it medical?" Qin Sighting nodded and picked up the cup of fruit tea by his hand to take a sip. He seemed to be very satisfied with the taste and took another sip. Seeing that he liked it, Shirnianj felt that she should tell Auntie Xiang tomorrow to make more and put it in the fridge. This way, Qin Sighting could still drink it when he came. He had an injury on his hand and was very satisfied with her bandaging. Perhaps he would come again tomorrow. "If you want to read the book, take it back. Anyway, I borrowed it from the provincial library. We can return it together in 2 days." As she said this, she felt that her words were not bad. She even gave them a chance to go to the library together again. In her heart, she silently praised herself for being a clever little girl. Qin Sighting glanced at the clever little girl in front of him and did not say anything else. He did not seem to feel much about the passage of time, but Shirnianj was worried that he would leave immediately after every conversation ended. But it was already so late. How long could she stay? "Almighty Qin, tonight's self-study session ended a little early. I still have 2 sets of papers to finish. You haven't done the homework I copied for you, have you? Look at my poor grades. Coincidentally, I have nothing to do right now. Why don't the 2 of us do our homework together? If I don't know the questions, you can teach me." Shirnianj's expression was sincere. In fact, when she said this, she was a little nervous. After all, it was already so late. Qin Sighting glanced at the time. It seemed that he had only ended his evening self-study session at 9 o'clock every day. He did not feel that there was anything wrong with the 2 of them doing homework together so late at night. He answered, "Sure, go ahead." Shirnianj had never been so proactive and happy to do her homework. Without any hesitation, she rushed to bring her bag over. Although this small bar counter was not big, it was enough for the 2 of them to sit opposite each other and do their homework. She was definitely too embarrassed to call him to the study. It was already late at night, and the 2 of them were alone. At least, this was the living room. There was a floor-to-ceiling window opposite, and it looked quite open. If they went into the study together, she would be so distracted that she wouldn't be able to do her homework in the quiet, shrunken space. She glanced at his hand again and took out his homework from his bag. She placed it in front of him and gave him a look that signaled for him to begin. Qin Sighting picked up the pen and looked at her again. Usually, the two of them sat at the same table. Although they sat very close to each other, they sat sideways after all. Now that they were facing each other, as long as they moved slightly, they would be able to see each other's eyes. This feeling was really too exciting and nervous. Sensing his gaze, Nianj lowered her head and pretended to do her homework seriously. And when she thought about how she had personally copied some of the questions in his homework for him, she felt that the atmosphere was magical and intimate. The surroundings were too quiet, and the questions on the paper were too difficult. Nianj gradually focused her attention on her homework. In the air, she could only hear the occasional rustling of their pens. The questions were difficult, and there was a lot of homework. Time passed bit by bit. When she reached the last question on the last paper, Nianj finally raised her sore neck from lowering her head. She raised her eyes and saw that Qin Sighting had already finished writing. He sat opposite her and did not speak. It seemed like he was watching her write. Her face instantly heated up. "Look at how long I've been doing my homework." "Not long," Qin Sighting said calmly. "But it's only been 20 minutes. I can tell that your way of solving the questions is still the same as in the second year of high school. Your way of thinking hasn't changed." When Nianj faced this top student, she was used to her bad grades. Hearing his words, her face did not turn red nor did she pant. "Then did I answer correctly?" "The answer is correct." "That's good. Teacher Zhao also said that my train of thought can't keep up with everyone, but thankfully, I can answer correctly in the end using the simplest method. After all, the college entrance examination mainly depends on the answers. There are so many papers, and the teacher won't check my train of thought one by one. No matter how rigorous my train of thought is, it won't add any points." As she spoke, she lowered her head and continued to solve the last question. She had indeed written all the questions correctly, but her speed was very slow. When she finished, she saw that Qin Sighting's gaze was still on her paper, patiently watching her write. Nianj immediately felt as though her heart had been splashed with wine. It was hot and burning. She pinched the pen in her hand and then put it down. "All right, I'm done." "And?" She then glanced at the time. It was 10:30 p.m. Qin Sighting was actually at her house. He had yet to leave at 10:30 p.m. "It's already so late," she muttered softly. "And I finished my homework. I've drunk the fruit tea and wrapped my hands." Qin Sighting slowly counted the reasons she had tried to make him stay. "Can I leave now?" Nianj looked at him. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't dare to. In the end, he didn't give her a chance to ask him to stay for the night. He put the German doctor's book into his bag, put on his black shoulder bag, and left. Nianj thought to herself that her place was very big. There were several guest rooms on the upper and lower floors. If he wanted to avoid suspicion, he could sleep in a guest room further away from her room. It was already so late. What time would it be if he went back? However, Qin Sighting did not give her a chance to speak, and left just like that. She quickly got down from the bar counter and quickly followed. Almighty Qin. Qin Sighting had already walked to the door. He glanced back at her. "It's getting late. Take a shower and sleep early." She swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. Suddenly, she didn't have the courage to say it. She really wanted to say, "Just sleep here for the night. We'll go to school together tomorrow." However, when the words reached her mouth, she still said, "And all right. Then you have to take care of your hands. Don't touch the water when you go back to shower." "N," he answered, pushed the door open and left. Seeing his back view disappear outside the villa, Nianj stood in front of the door and watched his back view. She pursed her lips, feeling reluctant to part with him. Qin Sighting did not turn back. If they walked out of the small path of Lishui Villa, it would be the main road. It would be easy to get a taxi. She did not need to worry about him going home alone. After all, she was not a girl who needed to worry. However, when she closed the door and looked back at the empty living room, she then looked in the direction of the bar counter and felt her heart tighten. However, she knew that even if she really spoke, Qin Sighting would not stay. Chapter 1488. Right now, Nianj was not even in the mood to shower or sleep. She sat on the sofa and turned on the television in a daze. She was not sleepy at all. Qin Sighting had already left for 5 minutes. He should have already hailed a taxi. She leaned against the sofa, supporting her chin with her hand as she sighed. All of a sudden her phone vibrated. She sat up straight, picked up her phone and opened it to take a look. It was a message from Qin Sighting. Qin Sighting, rest early. Girls live outside by themselves. Don't easily ask anyone to stay overnight. You have to learn to protect yourself. Nianj held her phone and stared at it for a long time. Her heart, which had been messing around for a long time, finally calmed down. He could tell that she had been wanting to say something all night, and could also tell what she meant. He definitely wouldn't think too much about it, but he was thinking for her, so he didn't give her a chance to speak. Qin Sighting. He was poisonous. How could she quit when she was so fond of her? She smiled and replied, "Good night." Then she stopped thinking about it, and got up to go back to her room to shower and sleep. The next day, when Nianj saw Qin Sighting walking over under the tree, she immediately looked at his hand. She saw that the gauze on his hand was wrapped well, and was still the same as last night. She could tell that it had not touched water and was clean. During class during the day, she would occasionally pay attention to his hand. When he wanted to take something, she would be the first to stand up and help him take it. During lunch, Zhao Xiaoqing clicked her tongue and said that she was deeply in love and couldn't extricate herself. She didn't know when Almighty Qin would give her a response. Nianj didn't think too much about it. Anyway, he was injured now, so she wanted to help him do something. Otherwise, she wouldn't even be able to interfere. In the afternoon, Nianj saw that Qin Sighting had not moved his hand all day. He was placing his left hand on the table and slowly picking up the papers. She glanced at it and said, "The wound hasn't healed yet. Bear with it. If you keep moving, you won't like it. Then you'll have to wrap it for many more days." Nianj smiled at him. "I told Auntie Xiang to make some food before she leaves tonight. Don't eat at school tonight. Anyway, school ends early today. When you go to my place tonight, try the soup Auntie Xiang made. It's delicious." Qin Sighting turned his head to look at her. Nianj smiled at him. Qin Sighting looked at her with sincerity. Seeing that he did not speak, she thought that it was too abrupt to ask him to go. She quickly said, "Your hand has to be changed every day. Aren't you going to go to my place to bandage it? If you don't go, you have to remember to go to the hospital to bandage it. If you..." Tang, Sighting nodded. "Qi," he said. "Sighting? Question mark. Ah, Tian." Nianj's breathing stopped. She really wanted to grab his hand and shake it. She wanted to ask him, "Almighty Qin, are you awake?" To 4. Chiped. Been. To 4. I've been have been for long. School ended at 8 in the evening again. This time, the two of them did not have to walk so far. They took a taxi outside the school and returned to Lishui Villa. Nianj didn't eat that night. She didn't know if Qin Sighting had eaten, but she remembered that he only went out to buy a bottle of water during dinner break. It had only been 10 minutes. He probably hadn't eaten. Thus, when they arrived home, they saw that Auntie Xiang had already left. However, there were still various dishes and soup that had just been prepared in the kitchen. They were all kept warm and could be eaten directly. The first thing she did when she entered was, of course, to bandage his wound. Seeing that she was becoming more and more professional, Qin Sighting sat at the small bar counter yesterday and allowed her to do as she pleased. After wrapping it for an entire day, the bleeding had already stopped. Thankfully, the weather today was not particularly hot. The wound did not flare up because it had been wrapped. However, Nianj had forgotten to buy new gauze, so when she wrapped it for him today, she specially wrapped it twice less than yesterday. She tried her best to keep the wound on his palm in a better ventilated state. After wrapping it up, she went to the kitchen to get the bowls and chopsticks. She took out all the dishes that Auntie Xiang had cooked and brought them to the table one by one. All right, let's eat." She smiled as she placed the cutlery on both sides of the dining table. When Qin Sighting really sat down to eat with her, Nianj picked up her chopsticks to pick up some food. At the same time, she seemed to inadvertently raise her eyes to look at him. She silently asked herself in her heart, when did they start to get so close and intimate? She couldn't tell when it started, but it was gradually getting closer and closer. Bit by bit, it had reached today's state. Was it a friendship between deskmates? Or was it deeper, as she thought? After dinner, she planned to continue doing her homework with Chin Sighting, just like yesterday, but her mother suddenly called. Although her parents usually didn't have much time to accompany her, they would chat with her on the phone. Under normal circumstances, she didn't dare to ignore Madame Yang Jinjin's call. She could only ask Chin Sighting to sit on the sofa and wait for her for a while. Then, she was afraid that her mother would know that she had brought the boy she liked home. She would definitely nag her again and fly back from abroad overnight. To be safe, she ran back to the bedroom to pick up the phone. On the phone, she told her mother about school and life for the past few days. Madame Yang Jinjin did not forget to ask how her development with the boy she liked had been recently. Ange was in a difficult position. She wanted to lie, but she felt that she couldn't. However, if she didn't lie, the person she liked was at her home. In the dead of the night, she had just had dinner with her, and was waiting for her to come downstairs to do her homework. She couldn't say it. She simply sat in the room, and told her mother everything to make her mother feel at ease. In the beginning, her mother didn't believe her. Based on her mother's intuition, she felt that something was hidden. However, after chatting for a while, she realized that Ange had always been very reassuring. Although she was young, she wouldn't lose her rationality in relationships. In the end, she decided not to ask. In the end, Ange ended the call with the excuse that she hadn't done her homework. The call lasted for a full 20 minutes. She quickly put down her phone and ran out. When she went downstairs, she wanted to call Chin Sighting and say that she was here. She could do her homework now. She had been waiting for a long time. However, just as she ran to the corner of the stairs on the first floor, she suddenly saw that Chin Sighting had fallen asleep on the back of her sofa. His head was raised, and his hand was resting on the sofa. He was quiet. Ange's voice was stuck in her throat. She couldn't believe that he had actually fallen asleep in her house. She quickly lightened her footsteps and quietly walked over. Chapter 1489. Ange walked over. After knowing him for so long, this was not the first time she felt warmth and familiarity. However, at this moment, she suddenly felt that her relationship with Chin Sighting was really very close. So close that he would fall asleep in her home. She walked around the sofa, and carefully poked her head out to look at his sleeping face. Suddenly, she wished that time could stop like this. She didn't want to do any homework tonight. He could just sleep like this until he went to school with her tomorrow morning. At most, they could catch up on their homework during the morning self-study period. She stood by the sofa and looked at him quietly. She then looked at his sleeping posture and thought for a moment. She turned around and brought a pillow over. When she walked back, she was still wondering if she should stuff a pillow for him to lean more comfortably. But what if he woke up? Chin Sighting must have accidentally fallen asleep while waiting for her. If he woke up, he probably wouldn't sleep again. Ange stood on the spot, feeling a little conflicted. She looked at him for a long time, pacing back and forth with the pillow in her hand. She turned back to see him sleeping on the sofa. This leather sofa was very soft. She often slept on it. In fact, it didn't matter if she put a pillow or not. After struggling for a while, she put the pillow back to the side and stood by the sofa to look at Chin Sighting's sleeping face. So beautiful. It seemed that every time she had this opportunity to look at him intently, she would be at a loss for words. In her mind, there were only the words so handsome, so handsome, so handsome echoing over and over again. However, if it was said that when she first saw him, she was only captivated by his looks, after so long, she knew that it was not just because of his so-called good looks. Chin Sighting was really too good. She really liked him. She had never liked someone like this before. From the looks of it, his skin was really good. It was very white, but it was not the kind of very feminine white. Instead, it was the kind of white that was very healthy, sunny and clean. Ange quietly leaned over to take a closer look. She gently stepped forward and stepped on the edge of the carpet under the sofa. This time, she was so close that her legs were pressed against the edge of the sofa. She then leaned closer. Just as she leaned over, Chin Sighting's leg, which was bent up because he was leaning against the sofa, suddenly stretched forward. She did not expect his leg to suddenly stretch forward. Coincidentally, her leg was right there, and she was hit by his leg. In the next moment, because she was too careful, she could not stand steadily. She suddenly fell toward the person sleeping on the back of the sofa. With Shirnian's pounce, Chin Sighting quickly opened his eyes. He looked down drowsily and saw a head lying in his arms. Then, he slowly raised his head awkwardly and met his gaze. I didn't do it on purpose. Shirnian was so embarrassed that she wished she could turn back time. Seeing that he had indeed been woken up by her, she quickly put on an apologetic smile. When she realized that her hands were still pressed against his arms, she quickly retracted her hands and quickly retreated from his arms. Then she quickly took several steps back, maintaining a distance of at least 3 meters. Chin Sighting didn't know if he had suddenly been woken up from his sleep, or if something had happened. He was still sitting there in the same posture, but his gaze landed on her quickly retreating body, and then at her face. I really didn't mean to wake you up. Shirnian quickly pointed at the other pillow on the other side of the sofa. I saw that you were asleep and wanted to help you put the pillow behind you, but I was afraid of waking you up, so I stood by the side and hesitated. Who knew that your originally well-placed leg would suddenly stretch forward? I tripped and lost my footing, so. What time is it? He changed from leaning against the back of the sofa to a normal sitting position on the sofa, as if nothing had happened. Shirnian quickly looked at the time. It's past 9. At this moment, Chin Sighting had already picked up his phone and looked at the time. It was indeed past 9. Shirnian was a little worried that he would leave immediately after waking up. She quickly changed the topic and said, Do you want to do your homework now? I called my mother for too long and made you wait for so long. If I had known you were so tired, I would have. It's fine. Go ahead. Chin Sighting stood up. Because of his actions, the distance between them had shortened by at least 10 centimeters. Shirnian subconsciously took half a step back. He glanced at her because of her half a step back. What's wrong? Nothing. Do your homework. As she spoke, she recovered her expression and rushed to the small bar counter to get the papers. Since he asked this, it meant that he did not take the matter of her pouncing on him seriously. This indeed made her feel less awkward, but thinking about it, did he not feel a little, at all? Could it be that he treated her as a brother? At the very least, she was still a girl. When she pounced on him, it was as though nothing had happened, although it could indeed make her feel less awkward. That night, she kept her head down to write the papers, but she was absent-minded. She answered several questions wrongly. When she raised her eyes, she saw that Chin Sighting was almost done. He really didn't take it to heart at all. The speed of her homework was not affected at all. Shirnian shrugged her head. Her heart was filled with thoughts, and the more she wrote, the more confused she became. In the end, she put down her pen and stopped writing. However, just as she put down her pen, Chin Sighting was still writing his paper. Without raising his head, he calmly said, The first page's third question, the 7th question, and all the questions on the second page's lower left half. Do it again. Shirnian. She looked at him in surprise. Did you see that I answered wrongly? He did not answer. Without raising his head, he said, Do it again until it's right. Oh, she answered gloomily and in a daze. She obediently went to write again. As she was writing slowly today, she had to write again many times. Although she tried her best to be serious, she was still a little absent-minded. Chin Sighting did not rush her, nor would he easily tell her the answer. He only occasionally mentioned a few things about solving the problem. There was quite a lot of homework today. In the end, she finally wrote everything correctly. The clock was already 11:50 p.m. When Chin Sighting was here, she always felt that time passed especially quickly. She did not realize that it was so late. When she picked up her phone to look at the time, she was shocked. It's almost midnight. She was surprised. Chapter 1490. N. After responding, he took her paper to check and put it down. All right, I'll go back first. Oh. She nodded gloomily. This was because the message he had sent last night clearly indicated that no matter how late it was, he would not easily stay at a girl's house. Furthermore, it was all for her own good. She would not unconsciously think of anything else. Other than nodding, she did not know what to say. However, she was still a little worried after writing so late today. When he was about to leave, she walked over and asked, "Are you still coming tomorrow night?" Qin Sighting turned back to look at her. "I mean, you wrote so late today. When you go home and clean up, it'll probably be very late by the time you go to bed. Coming to my place might affect your normal schedule. After all, I'm too slow at doing homework." She paused. "So are you still coming tomorrow?" Qin Sighting did not answer at first. Then he raised his hand to look at his bandaged hand and gently shook it in the air. "Depending on the degree of healing, I'll come if I still need to apply medicine and bandage it." Sure, Nianj knew that he would come to her house. Of course, the premise was that she had helped him bandage it. She quickly nodded. "All right, then I'll ask Auntie Xiang to prepare dinner tomorrow. What do you like to eat? Tell me at school tomorrow. It's too late now. I'll call Auntie Xiang tomorrow." Qin Sighting smiled and did not say more. He waved his hand, indicating that he was leaving, and then left the door. Sure, Nianj turned back to look at the sofa not far away. She recalled the scene when he leaned against the back of the sofa, and she pounced on him. She had actually pounced on him. What would Qin Sighting think of her back then? Although she had explained later, he had always known that she liked him. Would he think that she did it on purpose? That she wanted to do that to him? She really didn't do it on purpose. It was all his fault for being tall and long. She did not expect him to suddenly stretch his legs forward. Sure, Nianj quickly raised her hands to press her cheeks, trying her best to reduce the heat. However, her heart was still pounding nonstop. The smell on his body was really nice. Liking a person made her feel that even his fingers that held the pen seemed to emit magic. Not to mention that she had thrown herself at him. She, Sure Nianj, had actually been in Qin Sighting's arms for a few seconds. Ah! The wound on Qin Sighting's hand healed rather quickly because she really put in a lot of effort to bandage it. In less than 4 days, he no longer needed to bandage it. As long as he paid attention to disinfecting it every day, it would be fine. However, even if he didn't need to bandage it anymore, he still went to her house for a few days. It was great. Qin Sighting accompanied her home every day and only left after he finished his homework. This relationship actually lasted for a week. It was getting closer and closer to the college entrance examination. This week, the teacher began to strictly control the evening self-study session. The time for the evening self-study session was changed from 8 to 10 o'clock. Sure enough, even if third-year students were as tired as dogs, they still had to listen to the teachers and the school's arrangements. Originally, she was used to doing homework at home with Qin Sighting after school every day. Suddenly, she had to study in school for so long. Sure, Nianj was resistant, but thankfully, Qin Sighting was her desk mate. In fact, she could sit by his side from morning to night every day. However, the atmosphere at home was completely different from being alone in school. On Wednesday morning, everyone returned from their morning exercises. Sure, Nianj stood up to get herself a glass of water. When she returned to her seat, the male deskmate at the front table turned back and said to her, "Earlier, Lin Su placed a few books on your desk. There's also a small bag for me to hand to you." Before Sure Nianj could speak, she saw a beautiful gift bag placed on her desk. Zhao Xiaoqing pouted at her from behind, as though she had discovered something incredible. Sure Nianj was somewhat confused. She glanced at the books on the table. They were all revision books for third-year students that she could use recently. She opened them and flipped through them. She found that the main points had been drawn. It was clear that the class monitor, Lin Su, had personally drawn them page by page. She picked up the small bag and opened it. It was a transparent white crystal doll that girls had been especially fond of recently. It was clean, translucent, and cute. The label on the bottom was that it was a flagship store of a crystal brand in Hong Kong. What was this? She put down the crystal doll, picked up the books and flipped through them. Then she saw a piece of paper fall out. It landed on the ground. At this moment, Qin Sighting walked back, and the piece of paper landed by his feet. Seeing her turn back, He realized that the paper was hers. He bent down and picked it up for her. His gaze naturally swept across the contents. Shirnianj did not know what was written on it. She only saw Qin Sighting take a look and did not say anything. Instead, she turned her gaze to the class monitor, Lin Su, who was sitting in the front seat. Why was Qin Sighting suddenly looking at him? Shirnianj blinked at Qin Sighting. He did not speak and placed the piece of paper on the table. She quickly picked it up and saw that there was a boy's beautiful handwriting on it. Nian Nian, I know that after you skipped a grade, you've been feeling pressured by the 3rd year of high school. I've drawn many important questions that you're prone to make mistakes in the recent mock exams. Take a look. I hope we can get into the same university. Also, my cousin went to Hong Kong a few days ago. When she came back, she brought me some small gifts. I saw that the crystal doll was very cute and suitable for you, so I gave it to you. I hope you'll be happy every day. Lin Su, who hopes to meet you in the same university in a few months' time. After Shirnianj finished reading, she put down the note in her hand. This kind of letter that looked like a confession, but it wasn't exactly a confession. It didn't seem to be a confession, but it was clearly a confession. Should she reply? Furthermore, with so many books, it was obvious that the class monitor had slowly and seriously helped her draw them. If it was the crystal doll, she could return it, but she couldn't pretend that she didn't see these people who stayed up all night to help her draw the important points in the books. Right now, everyone was very busy, and the time they could squeeze out was all used to revise. Even if she didn't have that kind of feelings for the class monitor, she couldn't ignore it. Just as she was hesitating on how to resolve this matter, Qin Sighting's voice rang in her ears. Sit down. She abruptly returned to her senses and realized that she had been standing in his seat. He was standing by the side. Earlier he hadn't said anything, but the bell had already rung. She was still standing there without moving. She quickly returned to her seat. When she saw Qin Sighting sit down, she quickly stuffed the note back into the books. Chapter 1491. Seeing that she carefully stuffed the piece of paper back into the book, Qin Sighting indifferently glanced at the extra books on her desk. Aren't you going to study medicine? He suddenly asked. Shirnianj turned to look at him because of his sudden question. It seemed like he rarely spoke after class. He usually didn't speak much. Now that the teacher was standing on the podium, he suddenly asked her. Although his voice was not loud, only she could hear it. Lin Su won't major in medicine. I'm afraid the agreement of you meeting in the same university won't be fulfilled, he said expressionlessly. Shirnianj. She didn't agree to this agreement. She glanced sideways at him, wanting to know his expression. However, he was still expressionless. She then looked at the books on the table. Shirnianj suddenly moved closer to his side and whispered, Almighty Qin, it's time to return the books I borrowed from the provincial library. Let's find time to return them together in the next 2 days. Coincidentally, help me find a few revision books. Even if I want to study medicine, I have to deal with the college entrance examination. Qin Sighting did not speak at first. A moment later he said, the weekend. All right, then let's go together this weekend. Shirnianj almost laughed out loud. Was she thinking too much? Could it be that he took offense just now? If he minded, he could have said it directly. However, Shirnianj did not have the leisure to play with other people's feelings. The class monitor was quite a good person. He was very upright and had a good personality. There were many girls in the class who liked him. She could not delay his youth and good time to date. After the next class, she quickly returned the things to him. The class monitor, Lin Su, saw that she had returned them all. Without asking, he knew her attitude. He glanced at her and asked, because of Qin Sighting? Shirnianj looked at him and did not nod or shake her head. She only smiled. Class monitor, thank you. I'm very sorry, I didn't appreciate your kindness. Seeing that she did not answer directly, Lin Su smiled. Forget it. I've long seen that you've been guarding that piece of ice. You must like him. Now it seems like it's true. Shirnianj did not explain. She only looked at him. Don't be angry, class monitor. Right now studies are more important, right? Look, we're all single now. Lin Su was not a person with low EQ. He knew that she was helping him find a way out. Okay, I got it. Go back and guard that block of ice of yours. I can't reform you. I just don't know when you can melt that block of ice. After saying that, Lin Su directly put the books and the small bag back into his desk. Obviously, he did not want other passers-by to see it. A simple gift was returned. It was so embarrassing. Nianj giggled and chatted with him for a long time. This matter was finally resolved without hurting each other's face. She returned to her seat. Qin Sighting had just gone out with the teacher, and his seat was empty. Behind them, Hao Xiuxia and Zhao Xiaoqing seemed to be quarreling. Don't talk to me. Zhao Xiaoqing rolled her eyes at Hao Xiuxia. Then she saw that Nianj had returned and said to her, Nian Nian, let me tell you in the future, if this damn fatty dares to kick your chair again, squeeze him back and squeeze him into the corner. He takes up too much space. Sometimes, I feel that if the space is bigger, I won't even be able to write on the chair. Forget it. When did I push the table so far away? It's clearly because you're small, and your arms aren't long enough. You're already 18 and not even 1.6 meters tall. How dare you say I'm fat? Hao Xiuxia refused to be outdone. Look at how far you pushed the chair back when I wrote a word. You keep saying that it's crowded. Don't you think about it? With such a big distance, it can fit your flesh. How am I supposed to write? Ever since I became deskmate with you, I've lost 5 kilograms. What else do you want? The two of them spoke one after another, and their expressions were filled with anger. Nianj was amused. The two of them usually bickered, but today their expressions were so serious. It seemed like they really had a conflict. However, the bell had already rung, so she could not ask anything. She sat down and turned back to see that Zhao Xiaoqing and Hao Xiuxia were still ignoring each other. She turned her head and did not speak. When Qin Sighting returned, Nianj leaned close to him and whispered, We quarreled at the back table earlier. Qin Sighting did not look back. He only lowered his eyes to look at her because of her approaching posture. She thought that he would ignore such a boring topic, but he replied, N. Nianj asked again, Will we quarrel? Qin Sighting answered again, No. These 2 words made her extremely happy. She was so happy that she wanted to continue speaking, but after all, it was already time for class. She quickly sorted out her emotions and sat down properly. However, she was in a good mood for the entire class. Before the afternoon self-study session, Zhao Xiaoqing and Hao Xiuxia were still arguing with each other. One said that the other was a short and thin little bean curd, while the other said that the other was a strong and fat bear. Neither of them was willing to give in to the other. Nianj turned back and tried to mediate. However, after she said a few words, the two of them turned their heads and did not speak. Difficult. It was really difficult. What was there to argue about? In the past half a month, Nianj's results were not bad. In any case, if she wanted to study medicine, she would definitely be able to pass the minimum score. Qin Sighting was still so steady. In the 3 years of high school, no one could beat him in scores. A top student was indeed a top student. Perhaps Nianj had made the right choice when she chose to sit by his side. She was a second-year high school student who had skipped a grade. In less than a year, her grades had really improved by leaps and bounds. The homeroom teacher, Teacher Zhao, was also very satisfied. Therefore, when he saw Nianj and Qin Sighting going to and from school together, he maintained a state of turning a blind eye. After all, these 2 little ancestors' backgrounds were too big to afford to offend. After returning home with the results of the mock exam, Nianj looked at her score that had soared compared to a few months ago, and felt very satisfied. Then she picked up the report card, and looked at the 3 words, Qin Sighting, who was ranked first. She was even more satisfied. Why was her deskmate so amazing? Why was the person she liked so good? She picked up her phone, and suddenly wanted to send Qin Sighting a message. It seemed like it had been a long time since the two of them had texted. That time, after he came to her house for a week, he did not come again after his hand injury healed. After that, although they still walked together at school and could talk in class, they rarely sent messages. She suddenly missed him. Nianj lay on the sofa and wrote, and deleted on her phone. After a long time, she finally sent a message. Where are you? Qin Sighting did not reply to this message. After waiting for a long time, she did not receive a reply. Shirnianj put down her phone, took a deep breath, and turned to look outside. It was early May. It was raining again. Chapter 1492. When her grandfather called her, Shirnianj was still sleeping in Lishui Villa. Although her biological clock had long been fixed, and she would definitely wake up at 5 or 6 o'clock, it was a rare weekend after all. Furthermore, it was rare for her to rest for an entire day on Sunday. When she woke up and saw that Chin Sighting still did not reply, she closed her eyes and continued sleeping. In the end, she was woken up by her grandfather's call before 8 o'clock. Ever since she skipped a grade to year 3, her grandfather knew that she was under a lot of pressure from her studies, so he rarely asked her to go to the laboratory to help. During the winter break, she had gone there twice, but at that time, there was nothing in the laboratory that she needed to interfere with, so she went to take a look and returned. Today, her grandfather asked her to go over. She quickly got up to take a shower. When she changed her clothes and was about to leave, she took out her phone and saw that Chin Sighting still had not replied. She didn't know if he didn't see it, or if he saw it at night, but was busy and forgot to reply. Logically speaking, it was more likely that he had forgotten to reply. Shirnianj had lunch with her grandfather at noon. Later, her grandfather asked her to help draw a few pictures in the laboratory. He stood by the side and watched her draw while asking, "Your parents didn't ask you to study business and finance again?" "No, they also know that I've been following you since I was young. There are many things that they can't control." After a long time they gave up. Shirnianj did not even raise her head as she seriously drew the picture and answered, "Then go to the medical school to report after the college entrance examination. I've already informed the school leaders." "NN, have you been living alone outside recently?" "Yes." "What about the 2 people who usually follow you?" "Uncle Chin and Auntie Xiang often accompany me, but most of the time I'm alone. It's quite good to be alone. A little girl usually comes home so late from school. No matter if she takes a taxi back or something, it's not safe to be alone." "No, I have to go back with you tonight to see how your place is like." Shirnianj had no objections. She nodded and lowered her head to continue working. After working in the laboratory for an entire day, she finally remembered to look at her phone. When she took it out, she saw that Chin Sighting had replied to her at noon. At home. She had left her phone in the cupboard outside the lab that afternoon, so she did not hear or reply. 10 minutes later, he sent her another message. "What's up?" Shirnianj said that her mood had been strangely low all day because he did not reply. Even though she had missed the time to reply, when she saw his reply, she instantly felt her heart lighten up. Grandpa was waiting to go home with her, so she didn't have much time to look at her phone. She hurriedly replied, "It's nothing. I miss you." After replying, she didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. She directly took her grandfather's arm and went back. Grandpa drove, and she led the way. After arriving at Lishui Villa, Grandpa really walked a few rounds outside and carefully confirmed the security facilities nearby. When he entered, he even stopped at the security room outside the front door for a while and looked at the people inside carefully before driving in. Shirnianj was his big baby. He had brought her up since she was young. No matter who was in trouble, nothing could happen to her. She had always known that Grandpa doted on her. Now that she saw Grandpa checking inside and out, she felt helpless and warm in her heart. It was really good. In the future, when she went to the medical university, she would be able to see Grandpa more often. He was a guest professor there. When she finally entered the house and was changing her shoes, Shirnianj suddenly recalled something. She suddenly shouted from behind, "Wait, old Yang. Don't move first. Wait for me to get you slippers." Grandpa's surname was Yang. Everyone addressed him as Dr. Yang or Professor Yang. Shirnianj either called him Grandpa or Old Yang. At this moment, she suddenly shouted, causing Grandpa to be stunned. He turned back to look at her. "Don't we have them?" Shirnianj pointed at the pair by the side. "That were the pair by the side. The one my dad wore when he came. Or there's a new pair in the cabinet. Don't step on the right one." Grandpa was confused by her, but he still listened to her. He wore the left pair and turned back to ask her, What happened to the right pair? Nothing much. Just wear the left one. After speaking, Nianj also changed her shoes. She did not have time to put on her slippers. She quickly picked up the pair of slippers that Qin Sighting had worn the past few times and placed them properly in the shoe cabinet. She then took out a pair of other slippers and put them on. What's wrong with you? I didn't see so many rules when I went to the Sure family. You live by yourself, but you have so many problems. Grandpa rolled his eyes at her. You're so flustered. You have to be careful of a pair of slippers. Nianj only smiled and did not dare to speak. Grandpa, you seem to have lost weight recently. Have you been busy in the lab recently? Nianj went to change into a comfortable set of home clothes. Seeing that Grandpa had already gone to prepare dinner, she stood outside the kitchen and asked him, Have I lost weight? I don't think so. As Grandpa spoke, he sized up the small kitchen in her villa. He then turned back to ask her, Do you usually make food yourself? Occasionally. I know some simple ones, but they're not particularly delicious. Auntie Xiang often comes over. I've relied on her for too long. I'm used to it. Grandpa nodded. You still say that I'm thin. Grandpa nodded. How dare you say that I'm thin? I see that you've also lost weight recently. Don't think that you don't have to work out just because you're a girl. Your villa isn't small either. Just take out 2 rooms and put some fitness equipment. It'll strengthen your body and your immune system. It's good for your body. You have to know that everywhere in this world is not clean. Nianj chuckled and did not refute the words that he, an old doctor, was used to saying all day. And got it. I've been too busy revising recently. I'll do it after the college entrance examination. Just brush me off. Your temper is really the same as your mother's. When she was young, I didn't stop urging her. In the end, after she entered Shanghai with your father, she's been busy. Now, she looks energetic every day, but her health isn't good at all. Nianj allowed the old man to nag. In any case, as long as her grandfather was by her side, she would be very happy. Her grandfather's knife skills were really good when he cut vegetables and meat. After all, he had been a doctor for decades. He had held a scalpel countless times, let alone cutting such a small thing. She was also in the kitchen, helping out all the time. Recently, a country's medical support resource is about to produce results. After it ends, I can rest for at least 2 months. Do you have any places you want to go? Grandpa will accompany you. Chapter 1493. I don't have any special places to go. Recently, I've been busy revising. The mental pressure is indeed not small. After the exam, I'll rest for a period of time if I can rest well. You can rest abroad. Is there any country you want to go to? I haven't considered it yet. Usually, when I see my parents flying all over the world, I'm no longer interested in the various small gifts they bring back. Nianj held her chin with one hand. Speaking of which, after the college entrance examination, she should still have a chance to go out with Qin Sighting, right? On the other hand, grandmother has passed away for more than 10 years. Even now, you still refuse to find an old partner. Every time my mother returns to China, she tells you about this. Do you really plan to stay alone until you grow old? Nianj blinked and asked with a smile. Scram. Aren't I already old? I'm already in my 60s. Why would I need an old partner? Do you really want me to find you a step-grandmother? Of course I do. Why wouldn't I? Nianj helped her grandfather put the meat he had cut into a small plate and marinated it. She then looked at him and said, My parents have been taking over the Sure family's business for so many years. These years, they've really been thriving. There's no need to worry about anything at home. All these years, you've been researching various medical experiments, but you've never considered yourself. So what if you're old? It's not like I asked you to pick up young girls like young people. You can find yourself a spiritual partner when you're old. Who says that you can't meet true love at the age of 60? If you delay any longer, when you're 70, you'll probably have to find a young and beautiful auntie to steal your money. Her words angered her grandfather so much that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head. Little girl, what are you thinking about every day? Now that you've grown up and become enlightened, you actually dared to talk about true love with an old man like me. Do you know, love? I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just thinking that my grandfather is already in his 60s. But he's still so young, handsome, and elegant. It's not like you can't be so lonely all the time. Nianj quickly changed the topic of whether she loved him or not. She was afraid that her recent thoughts would be discovered by her grandfather. Her parents were very open and casual with her education, but her grandfather would be very strict. If he knew, he might not be able to explain it to Teacher Zhao. Teacher Zhao would probably be strict with her from now on. He might even force her to separate her seat from Qin's sighting. Grandfather didn't like to talk about these things. After cutting for a while, he said, "Let's talk about it later. I don't have any thoughts now." Nianj didn't say anything more, and continued to help him in the kitchen. When it was finally time for dinner, Grandpa asked her about her recent studies. He also said that he told Teacher Zhao to ask the class monitor and some of the students with good grades to help her out. He also asked if there were any students who often helped her with her studies. After all, the class monitor, Lin Su, was in the top 10 of the school year. However, to Nianj, the person who was affected the most was Qin's sighting. Lin Tu, T, Lint, Lin Tang He. N. I'll find some time to have a meal with you. Before the college entrance examination, Grandfather will help you thank him. There's no need. Grandfather, we children are all afraid when we see each other's parents. Are you going to see him? Is this a reward or a scare? What? Could it be a boy? Who said that the person who tutors me must be a girl? Did you specially tell Teacher Zhao? Grandfather thought about it carefully and realized that he had missed this point. However, seeing that she didn't seem to be in a relationship, he nodded. That's right. Forget it. It's fine as long as your grades can be raised. It's not long before the college entrance examination. You'll be able to do it in 2 more months. Nianj nodded. At this moment, Zhao Xiaoqing sent a message. She lowered her head to chat with Zhao Xiaoqing. Who are you talking to? Grandfather asked with a smile. My classmate, a girl sitting behind me. She's celebrating her birthday tomorrow. She asked me if I had time to go out for dinner tonight. Nianj answered frankly. Grandfather raised his brows. A girl? Not a boy. It's really a girl. Nianj raised her phone to show him the contents of the message. Look. Grandfather did not say that he wanted to see it, but his gaze still inadvertently swept over. He originally believed her, but seeing her expression of, I'm really chatting with a girl. There's no messy boy, he chuckled and said. If there's anything between you and any of your classmates, remember to tell me. This so-called situation was referring to her puppy love or something. N. She answered vaguely, and then lowered her head to continue texting Zhao Xiaoqing. Have you prepared a gift? Grandfather asked. Nianj thought for a moment. I'll go to the shopping mall near the school to take a look during the lunch break tomorrow. She had already known that Zhao Xiaoqing's birthday was coming up. There were so many students in a class, and every few days, there would be a classmate celebrating her birthday. However, she, who was not familiar with her, would at most say happy birthday. However, after she skipped a grade to her 3rd year, her best friend was Zhao Xiaoqing, so she had actually prepared a gift long ago. Zhao Xiaoqing had learned dance since she was young. In the past few years of high school, she had temporarily stopped all her dance classes because of her heavy studies. However, she still said that she wanted to apply for an art school in the future and continue learning ballet. Therefore, Nianj bought a ballet swan dress that was suitable for Zhao Xiaoqing's size. The price was not too expensive, but it still cost more than 3,000 yuan. This price was actually a little expensive for everyone who was an ordinary high school student. Even if she said that the dress was only 300 yuan, Zhao Xiaoqing would not believe her, nor would she accept it easily. Thus she hesitated. Should she take the time to buy something else tomorrow? However, she did not know what to buy. She couldn't possibly buy all kinds of revision questions for her. Could she? Zhao Xiaoqing would probably kill her. She recalled the little crystal doll that Lin Su had wanted to give her. It seemed that Zhao Xiaoqing also liked these cute little things. Nianj silently noted it down in her heart and decided to take a look tomorrow. Grandfather still had a lot of things to do in the laboratory and the hospital. After eating, he left. The next day, when Shirnianj woke up, she saw that Uncle Chin had arrived. Uncle Chin sent her to school, which happened to be a little earlier than her. She walked around some gift shops outside the school. She bought a pair of cute pink and blue bears. Below the bears was a music box. It was worth more than 100 yuan, and was very exquisite. As for the little swan dress, she planned to give it to Zhao Xiaoqing as a graduation gift after the college entrance examination. Chapter 1494. At night, Zhao Xiaoqing asked everyone to go to the KTV near the school. Although Zhao Xiaoqing's personality was very docile and simple, because she was too quiet and always sat in the back row, she did not have many friends who were especially close to her. There were only 4 or 5 of them, including Shirnianj and Hao Xiuxia, who quarreled with Zhao Xiaoqing all day. She was the only one who went to the KTV together. Why didn't I see Almighty Qin today? Nian Nian, weren't you very close to Almighty Qin some time ago? Jin Shui, who was usually on good terms with Zhao Xiaoqing, suddenly said this after entering the KTV and seeing that Shirnianj was helping the waiter distribute the fruits. It clearly sounded like a normal question, but for some reason, Shirnianj heard a hint of sarcasm in his tone. She raised her eyes to look at Jin Shui. Zhao Xiaoqing heard this and quickly came over to smooth things over. Xiao Shui, don't spout nonsense. Nian Nian and Almighty Qin are deskmates. It's normal for them to communicate a lot. They're both single. Don't say anything that will cause people to misunderstand. Ah, so I misunderstood. Jin Shui looked surprised. I thought Nian Nian and Almighty Qin were together. After all, I saw her go to and from school with Almighty Qin several times. However, I saw her following behind Almighty Qin several times. I think so too. With Almighty Qin's personality, he probably doesn't plan to fall in love in high school. Also, I remember that Nian Nian is going to study medicine. She's indeed not on the same path as Almighty Qin. Shirnianj put down the fruit platter in her hand. Zhao Xiaoqing knew Shirnianj's temper. She would either ignore everything, but if it involved Qin sighting, she would listen. She didn't know if she would be angry, but she had to prevent any conflicts from happening. She quickly pulled her back. Nian Nian, let's go order songs. As she spoke, she pulled Shirnianj away and explained softly, don't be angry, Nian Nian. I'm only familiar with these few people in class, but I've never told them about you and Almighty Qin. I know. I don't blame you. In fact, Shirnianj did not take it to heart, but Jin Shui's tone earlier was really asking for a beating. With her temper, she would accept it when she should, but she would not easily ignore it when she shouldn't. Just from these few sentences, it could be seen that Jin Shui and her friends must have been gossiping about him a lot. She didn't mind being discussed, but it wouldn't do if it involved Qin sighting. Hao Xiuxia was still eating by the side. He did not notice that there seemed to be a dispute between the girls. After Shirnianj was pulled away, he did not take it to heart and went to the other side. On the other hand, the girl who had been sitting with Jin Shui took the opportunity to come over and ask, Nian Nian, do you like Almighty Qin? Do you need us to give you some advice? Let's see how we can woo our Adonis. Shirnianj glanced at her. Isn't it Xiaoqing's birthday today? Why are you guys paying so much attention to me? Aren't we all classmates from class 6? Usually, you and Xiaoqing are the closest and rarely interact with the other girls. It's rare for us to have a chance to sing karaoke together. Just treat it as getting to know each other. The girl said as she grabbed a handful of melon seeds and ate them in front of her. Shirnianj smiled indifferently. And we know each other. At least after tonight, I'll definitely remember your names. I won't be like before when I can't even remember your surnames. The girl holding the melon seeds was stunned by Shirnianj's attitude, that she had never taken them seriously. Seeing that Shirnianj's gaze did not seem to be good at gossiping, she held it in for a long time and did not say anything. She turned around and returned to Jin Shui's side with the melon seeds. Almighty Qin is usually very popular with the girls in our school. You know, there are many girls in our class who have a crush on him. Ever since they saw you sitting next to him, many of them felt their hearts ache. Even if you didn't do anything, to them, You're already the invisible opposite. Don't take it to heart. Zhao Xiaoqing had only come out to celebrate her birthday. She didn't want these friends to be unhappy. Don't worry, it's fine. I didn't warn them. As long as they don't run in front of me and say those nonsense, I'll forget about this after leaving the KTV. Shirniange waved her hand and stood up to go over. Come. I'll choose a song. When Hao Xiosha heard that Shirniange was about to sing, he quickly came over and insisted on singing with her. In the end, Zhao Xiaoqing pulled him aside. It'll be late by the time we go back. Does Almighty Qin know that you're coming out with us tonight? Zhao Xiaoqing asked. Didn't he go to the provincial education department for a meeting with the principal today? He's the only student in the city. He hasn't been in school all day today. I didn't tell him. Shirniange continued to poke at the screen in front of her without looking up. The provincial education department is in High City. It's not far from here. The meeting must have ended by now. You can ask him to pick you up. Zhao Xiaoqing knew how much Shirniange cherished and was careful about Qin Sighting's feelings for him. She kindly suggested, you can also use my birthday as an excuse to ask him to come and join in the fun. Anyway, if I appear, he definitely won't give me face. However, if you ask him to come, I think Almighty Qin will come. I don't think so. He went out with the principal during the day. The principal and the people from the education department will definitely have a meal together. It can be considered a social gathering. Even if he comes back, it won't be too early. If he's tired, go back and rest. It's better not to come to school. Shirniange had already chosen a song. After speaking, she took the microphone. She was more open in front of her good friends. Although she was not a professional singer, she definitely would not be unpleasant. After singing a song, she gave Zhao Xiaoqing enough face. She sat back on the sofa and picked up a glass of juice with one hand and her phone with the other. Suddenly, she saw a message from Qin Sighting. Qin Sighting, you didn't go home? Shirniange's eyes lit up. She suddenly turned to look at Hao Xiosha, who was sitting by the side and nibbling on a watermelon. Did you send the news that we came to KTV for Zhao Xiaoqing's birthday to the class group? Yes. Hao Xiosha looked at her strangely. Aren't you in the group? I blocked the group messages. I didn't see it. She answered and lowered her head to look at the message. It had been sent 2 minutes ago. She quickly replied, and I'm going back soon. Did you go to the education department today? Did it go well? Can you go back to school tomorrow? After sending it, Qin Sighting did not reply immediately. 10 minutes later, her phone vibrated again. She picked it up and saw a message from Qin Sighting. I'm at the KTV, at the entrance. Chapter 1495. At first, Shirniange thought that she had seen wrongly. She took a closer look at the message displayed on her phone screen and stood up with a bang. What's wrong? Hao Xiosha was about to speak to her when she suddenly stood up and almost flipped the fruit plate in his hand. He quickly pressed it down and turned to look at her in surprise. I'm going out for a while. Shirniange did not explain and walked out, leaving a large group of people sitting in the KTV room with confused expressions. Jin Shui and the female classmate from earlier were still sitting there. When she saw Shirniange's dazed expression and saw that she had left, she directly said in a voice that everyone could hear, do you really think that just because your family is rich and powerful, you can get everything? She's been thinking about Almighty Qin for so long, and she's still sitting next to him. If it weren't for the fact that Almighty Qin couldn't be bothered to argue with her, he would have chased her to another seat long ago. She really thinks that she has a sense of existence by his side. As soon as she finished speaking, the few girls present who also had some admiration for Qin Sighting, but had never dared to show it, remained silent. They did not interrupt, but they all held the intention to watch the show. Zhao Xiaoqing frowned. Jin Shui, there's no need for you to say that, right? I didn't say anything. By the way, Zhao Xiaoqing, you usually sit behind Shirniange and Almighty Qin. You're the closest to them. Usually. Shirniange smiles mischievously and pretends to be cute by Almighty Qin's side, right? Don't you feel disgusted? Jin Shui hugged her arms as she sat on the sofa and snorted disdainfully. No, I only saw that Almighty Qin treats Nian Nian quite well. Zhao Xiaoqing didn't want to make everyone unhappy because of this topic, but she really felt that there was no need for everyone to treat Shinianj as an enemy just because she was sitting by Qin Sighting's side. Shinianj was really very good. At the very least, among the classmates she had met since she was young, no matter if they had good family conditions or not. It wasn't that there were none like Shinianj, but it was rare. TSK, why are you speaking up for her? Is it because you've been hanging out with her for so long that she always treats you to meals and buys you gifts? Are you hugging her thighs now? Jin Shui looked at her coldly. Zhao Xiaoqing's expression instantly darkened. Before she could say anything, Hao Xiuxia, who was busy eating, suddenly put down the fruit plate and said loudly, "What the F***ck are you talking about?" No one expected that the fatty, who usually didn't care about anything, would suddenly speak. He was a boy after all. Jin Shui was shocked when he suddenly spoke in such a tone. Zhao Xiaoqing sits at the same table as me. I can see how she usually interacts with others. I can also see what kind of person Shinianj is. Also, so what if the Shi family was rich and powerful? She had never done such a thing. Xiaoqing had always been fair, and had never taken advantage of anyone. Also, the gifts you gave are all here. Take a look. Shinianj's gifts are at most 20 to 30 yuan more expensive than yours. How did she show any sense of superiority? How did little Qing hug his thigh? If you don't know how to speak, don't King spout nonsense. Jin Shui looked at the gifts piled up by the side. At first she felt speechless, but then she mocked, that's right. The eldest daughter of the Shi family, who is worth hundreds of millions, actually gave her best friend a gift of more than 100 yuan. Your friendship is really suspicious. To us, a gift of more than 100 yuan might be a few days' worth of pocket money. To her, even beggars would be more than this, right? Hao Xiuxia and Zhao Xiaoqing knew very well how Shinianj usually treated them. Hao Xiuxia stood up and was about to speak when Zhao Xiaoqing quickly reached out to pull him. Hao Xiuxia stood up and was about to speak when Zhao Xiaoqing quickly reached out to pull him. Alright, stop talking. Nian Nian isn't someone that everyone loves. She said that she doesn't need everyone to like her. We know what's going on. It's my birthday today. Everyone be more harmonious. F***ck. Hao Xiuxia endured it and sat back down. He picked up the fruit plate again, but his expression was clearly not good. Jin Shui and the others were just casually saying it to regain some face. Seeing that the atmosphere was not right, they stopped talking. After a while, Jin Shui stood up again and said, "All right, this doesn't affect my friendship with Zhao Xiaoqing. Hasn't Shinianj already left? Anyway, I'm not familiar with her. It's fine if she leaves. Come, let's sing." Hao Xiuxia ignored them. He picked up the watermelon and took a bite. Then he glared at Zhao Xiaoqing, as though he was scolding her for making friends. Zhao Xiaoqing did not expect that singing karaoke would turn out like this. Usually, Nian Nian rarely interacted with the girls in class. Everyone was quite busy now. Shinianj was a student who had suddenly skipped a grade. There were only a few people she was familiar with. She was busy revising, and did not have time to come out for social activities. She was only classmates with Jin Shui, and the others on the surface. In private, she had never spoken much. She didn't expect that singing karaoke together would cause so much nonsense to reach Shinianj's ears. She was really impressed. Seeing that Jin Shui and the others had gone to order songs, Zhao Xiaoqing gave up her seat and turned to sit next to Hao Xiuxia. She picked up a piece of grape from the fruit plate in his arms with a toothpick and whispered as she ate, "I think they're really thinking too much. In our entire school, it seems like only Nian Nian is qualified to be with someone like Almighty Qin. Besides, Almighty Qin has always been quite good to Nian Nian." Hao Xiuxia snorted coldly. "I don't care about other people's matters. Anyway, stay away from such talkative girls in the future. You're usually quiet, and don't talk so much nonsense. Don't learn from these people." Zhao Xiaoqing was stunned for a moment before looking at him in surprise. Hao Xiuxia did not explain, and continued nibbling on his watermelon. Shinianj had already walked out of the KTV. She had even mentally prepared herself for a long time, telling herself to calm down. However, she couldn't calm down. What should she do? Qin Sighting wasn't in school today, But he suddenly came to the KTV. Given his relationship with the other students, and the fact that she heard that he never participated in any activities other than official school activities, he had never appeared on any of his classmates' birthdays. However, he actually suddenly came to the KTV in the middle of the night. She ran out of the KTV and saw Chin Sighting's back view standing beside the huge microphone statue in front of the KTV. He was as cold and tall as a jade tree. Sure, Nianj smiled and could not be bothered to be nervous. She ran over and called out to him, "Almighty Chin." When Chin Sighting heard the voice, he turned to look at her. At first, he was expressionless. However, when he saw her jogging over, he raised his brows. Sure, Nianj ran over with a smile. Before she could catch her breath, she called out to him again, "Chin Sighting." Chapter 1496. Chin Sighting looked at her. A few seconds later, his lips suddenly curled up, and he smiled at Sure Nianj. When he smiled, his eyes were very gentle. The street lamps fell into his eyes, as though there was a sea of stars. At that moment, Sure Nianj thought to herself, "It doesn't matter what other people's rumors are. I just like to follow behind you. As long as I can see you smile like this once a day, I'll be very satisfied." However, she had run too fast and could not help but cough twice when she ran behind him. Chin Sighting raised his hand and gently patted her back. Sure Nianj looked at Chin Sighting's gentle gaze and held back her cough. She raised her hand and patted her face as though to calm herself down. She then smiled and said, "Why did you suddenly come here? Don't you rarely participate in such activities?" Chin Sighting curved his lips. "Indeed, I don't participate." "Then why did you suddenly come here so late at night?" At this point, she suddenly pointed at the KTV behind her. "By the way, Zhao Xiaoqing and the others are still inside. Do you want to go in and sit for a while? Since you're already here, why are you standing outside? If you don't want to sing karaoke, you can sit down and rest for a while. Sit down and chat. Eat something. You definitely didn't eat well when you went out for a meeting with the school leaders during the day." Chin Sighting still did not speak, but his eyes were looking at her. Sure Nianj was about to say something when her phone suddenly rang. She quickly picked up the phone. "Hello, grandfather. You went out to play with your classmates. And I'm outside. Didn't I say yesterday that I have a good friend's birthday tonight?" Sure Nianj looked at Chin Sighting in front of her and said to the other end of the phone, "Grandfather, did you go to my place?" "No, I'm still in the lab. I looked at the time and remembered that you said you had an event tonight. I called to confirm your safety." "Haha, I'm definitely safe. We're all good friends. Don't worry." "What time are you going back? Do you need a car to pick you up?" "No need. I'll take a taxi back. I'm hanging up, grandfather. I'll go to your place again this weekend." She put down the phone and put it in her pocket. She raised her head and saw that Chin Sighting was still looking at her. Her eyes were bright. "Almighty Chin, are you passing by or did you come here on purpose? Where are you going so late?" Chin Sighting said, "I'm not passing by." "Oh, it's not the road." She nodded, but just as she was about to say something, she suddenly stopped. "Not passing by? Does that mean he came here on purpose? What did he come here for?" She looked at him again, but Zhao Xiaoqing sent her a message asking if she had left or was outside. She took a look at her phone and replied, "Wait for me for a while. I haven't left." Then she said, "Almighty Chin, are you going in?" "Who are they?" he asked. "Those in our class." "You know that I skipped a grade, and my relationship with the boys and girls in my class is very average. After all, I've been lacking classmates for 2 years. I'm already very lucky to know you and Xiaoqing. I'm not very familiar with the others, but it's Xiaoqing's birthday, so I played with them here for a while." As she spoke, she reached out to pull his arm, wanting him to go in with her. However, just as she was about to touch Chin Sighting's arm, she quickly stopped. What was her relationship with him? They were usually deskmates, so it was normal for them to accidentally touch each other's arms. It was also normal for her to grab his hand and help him bandage it when his hand was injured. However, it didn't seem right for her to pull him over at the entrance of the KTV in the middle of the night. She chuckled again. "Hee hee, do you want to come in and have a seat?" Chin Sighting's beautiful brows moved slightly as he looked at her hand. After 2 seconds, he gently raised his arm and let his arm touch her palm. It was almost summer. The weather at night was not cold, but it was slightly cooler than during the day. He was wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt and casual pants. When he leaned in, her palm felt the slight coolness of his skin. This warmth passed through her palm and instantly entered her heart. Nianj suddenly recalled the feeling of Chin Sighting holding her hand a few times. That indescribable throbbing. Right now, it was even more so, because he had taken the initiative to offer his arm. She directly held his arm, and the two of them walked toward the entrance of the KTV. When she held his arm, she was still hesitating whether she should place her hand on his forearm or raise it to maintain a polite distance. Before she could think of an answer, a few drunk men walked out of the KTV's entrance. They walked in a hurry and bumped into her. She staggered and leaned toward Chin Sighting. Not to mention that her hands were completely pressed against his. She almost bumped into his embrace when he turned his body to the side and brought her along to make way. Chin Sighting clearly looked dissatisfied as he glanced at the few people who had already staggered away. He lowered his head to look at her. "Are you okay?" "Yes. Of course there was something." She actually leaned into his arms again. Nianj pretended to be calm and retreated from his arms. She continued to hold his arm. "It's fine. Those people drank too much. It's too common in such a place. It's fine, it's fine. Let's go in." When they walked in, Nianj's hand was holding his, and her palm was pressed against his arm. In fact, the main entrance of the KTV was still some distance away from the private room on the second floor. In fact, they could take the elevator up, but it was only the second floor. Nianj could not bear to shorten the time they spent walking together, so she simply walked up the stairs in the middle of the KTV with him. As the two of them walked up step by step, Nianj lowered her head to look at Chin Sighting's casual pants. Why were his legs so long? Usually, when he wore his school uniform, she knew that he was tall and had long legs. However, the school uniform did not particularly accentuate his figure. Now that she saw him wearing such casual pants, he really looked good. The Chin family's background was too strong. It was impossible for Chin Sighting to debut and become a celebrity. Otherwise, if he was dug out by some talent scout in the future, he would definitely become an especially handsome and popular celebrity. However, if he really became a celebrity, she would have too many love rivals. Just thinking about it made her nervous. Chin Sighting's arm moved. She looked up at him and saw that he had stopped after walking up to the second floor. He lowered his eyes to look at her. "What's wrong with your hand?" Earlier, she had suddenly tightened her grip. It was because she thought that there were too many love rivals. She did not expect her body to react first and actually tighten her grip. Nianj blinked and changed the topic. "You haven't said it yet. Why did you suddenly come here?" Chapter 1497. Chin Sighting looked at her nervously, pinching his arm, and said, "Didn't you say you missed me?" Nianj's expression slowly changed from dazed to surprise, and then to some kind of emotional crack. She said she missed him? When? In a daze. She seemed to remember that in the last message she had sent him, there really seemed to be the words "I miss you." In the end, her expression turned to look at his face. Chin Sighting did not say anything more, and gestured for her to continue holding his arm. She obediently continued to hold his arm and walk forward. "Which one?" he asked, glancing in as he reached the doors of the first few boxes. "That one, 206. She pointed with her eyes. Then he went over. When she opened the door and entered, Nianj was hesitating about whether she should put down her hand when Chin Sighting had already walked in. She was also a little confused as she followed him in. The moment Chin Sighting's figure appeared in front of the door, Jin Shui, who was singing with the microphone, stopped. Her expression was surprised as she looked in the direction of the door in disbelief. She held the microphone and stood there, turning into a statue. The others also looked at Chin Sighting in surprise, especially when they saw that Nianj was holding his arm and entering with him. Although there were not many people in the private room, their gazes were different. The fruit pit in Hao Xiuxi's hand almost fell to the ground. Zhao Xiaoqing was surprised. Almighty Qin? Holy sh*t. What's going on? A brother who was close to Hao Xiuxia muttered. Hao Xiuxia expressed that he did not know either. Usually, he sat behind Qin Sighting and Shi Nianj, and knew that the two of them were quite close because they were deskmates. However, he did not expect that. Was this considered publicly announcing their relationship? No, when did they start? Not only were the two boys stunned, but the other girls' expressions were also interesting. At first, Shi Nianj couldn't believe that he would go in with her just like that. However, there were many people here, so she restrained her expression and said generously, "Go sit over there. There's an empty seat over there." Qin Sighting did not refuse. His gaze landed on Zhao Xiaoqing, who was still sitting there in surprise. "Happy birthday. I came in a hurry. I'll give you a gift later." "Ah, no need, no need. Almighty Qin, you actually came. This is a big gift for me, okay? This is too much face." Zhao Xiaoqing quickly stood up and gestured for the others to quickly move to the side and let Almighty Qin and Shi Nianj sit there. The few of them were silent and did not speak. When they received Zhao Xiaoqing's gaze, they thought for a moment and stood up to move aside. After all, it was Qin Sighting. Although this crown prince was usually quiet and did not like to fight in school, he was indeed the most difficult person to provoke in the entire school. He had the biggest background, so they had to avoid him. Qin Sighting did not say much. Shi Nianj pulled him over to sit, and he walked over to sit down. He was a clean and good-looking young man. He was tall and had long legs. When he sat down, he naturally stretched his legs forward. He was dressed in simple light-colored casual clothes. He did not look as strict as when he wore his school uniform in school, but he still exuded an unapproachable coldness. However, this coldness seemed to exclude Shi Nianj. He was not too cold to Shi Nianj. Zhao Xiaoqing felt that since Shi Nianj was here, there was no need for her to join in the fun. However, today was her birthday, and Almighty Qin was also here. She had to go over and say a few words, so she walked over and gave Shi Nianj a look. She meant for her and her Almighty Qin to sit here quietly and not go anywhere else. Then she asked, "Almighty Qin, do you want to drink or drink? Don't we still have exams tomorrow?" Qin Sighting asked. "Ah yes." Zhao Xiaoqing was stunned by the question. However, there had been exams every few days. They were already used to it, and were almost numb to it. "Then why are you drinking?" Qin Sighting saw that there were a few new bottles of mineral water on the coffee table. He took one over. "Go play. Don't worry about me. I'll drink this." Oh, okay." Almighty Qin's aura was too strong. Zhao Xiaoqing nodded repeatedly, and did not dare to ask any more questions. She turned around and left. Jin Shui and the girl from before stopped singing. They sat back on the sofa, and occasionally glanced in this direction. However, Qin Sighting clearly did not turn his gaze in that direction. He only looked at Shi Nianj, who was sitting beside him, but did not seem to have returned to normal. He casually opened a bottle of mineral water and handed it to her. "Why are you in a daze?" Shi Nianj turned to look at him, and instinctively took the water. She instinctively took a sip, and then reacted. Didn't he say he wanted to drink water? Why did he give it to her after opening it? When she looked again, he had already picked up another bottle, opened it, and drank it. Seeing him drink and swallow, Shi Nianj felt her throat start to burn again, especially in this KTV private room. The lights were flickering, and the atmosphere was different from when she was in school or outside. His words echoed in her mind again. "Didn't you say you missed me?" She said she missed him, so he came? Was he hinting at something? Almighty Qin. She sat by his side, thought for a moment, and decided to find a topic. Before she could finish speaking, he interrupted her softly. "Qin Sighting. Did he mean that he didn't like her calling him Almighty Qin, and wanted her to call him by his real name?" And Qin Sighting. Shi Nianj moved closer to his side. Seeing that he had no intention of avoiding her, she whispered by his side, "Your place is quite far from here, right?" Chapter 1498. Why else would I come? He smiled and moved his hand away from her head. Just this sentence was enough to make Shi Nianj blush, and her heart warm. She felt as though she was about to melt by his side. She had never joked about love, and she could tell that Chin Sighting was not the kind of person who would joke about such things. His gaze just now was clearly focused on her. Because she missed him he came. If she hadn't said that she missed him, why would he have come? After everyone left the KTV, Chin Sighting sent her to the taxi. Before he closed the door, her heart was still burning. She quickly raised her head to look at him. Chin Sighting had just picked up a call. Although he had hung up, she heard his phone vibrating in his pocket, but he did not pick it up. She was still looking at him, her eyes bright. Chin Sighting told the driver the address of Lishui Villa, and then glanced at her. Go back. Be careful. She nodded. For some reason, she suddenly recalled that Uncle Chin had said that the 4 big families in High City seemed to be the investors of Lishui Villa. She wondered if the Chin family had any shares. If he wanted to buy a villa in Lishui Villa, it should be easy. The villa opposite her had always been empty. If he could live in it, it would be great if they could go to school together and go home together every day. Of course, it was just a thought. Earlier in the KTV, because Chin Sighting was here, Jin Shui and the others suddenly became much gentler and quieter. They did not speak much, but they still wanted to show off. They ordered a few more songs. How Xiosha and the others also ran out to join in the fun, causing the private room to be noisy. After a while, they came to pull Shirnianj over to play with them. Chin Sighting only sat by the side and watched them. He did not participate in anything. It was obvious that he was very tired today, so no one dared to force him. Therefore, they did not chat much after that. Now she was going home. She was unwilling. She wanted to get out of the car to chat with him for a while before going back. But when she heard that the phone in his pocket was still vibrating, she did not say much. She only waved at him in the car. See you tomorrow, Chin Sighting, he smiled and helped her close the car door. At noon the next day, Zhao Xiaoqing had a stomachache because of her period. Shirnianj went to the school supermarket to help her buy a heat pack. In the end, the heat packs in the supermarket were sold out, so she had no choice but to go out of the school to buy them. At noon, there were always many students walking around outside the school. Many boys would usually hide outside and smoke at this time. Many people gathered in a small square in front of the school. Unless necessary, Shirnianj would usually stay in school. She rarely left the school at noon. Just as she was about to go to the supermarket, she passed by a small square with a lot of people in front of her. Suddenly, a puff of smoke was directly sprayed on her face. She turned around and saw that it was a few hooligans from grade 12, class 2. She didn't say anything and just assumed that they didn't mean it. She turned sideways and was about to walk past the small square. Yo, isn't this the medical genius who skipped a grade to grade 12? Someone with a cigarette in his mouth stopped in front of her, blocking her way. Younger than us by a year, right? Little sister, do you want a cigarette? I don't smoke. Move aside. Shirnianj's expression was cold as she pushed the person in front of her away. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. There's still an hour before class starts. Why are you in such a hurry? The person sprayed another puff of smoke at her face. Brothers, we haven't eaten lunch yet. Do you want to treat us to a meal? This group of people was probably related to Tang Xiao, or the class belle of their class, Suichi. After all, they were in the same class. They had probably heard of something. Although they didn't come to stop her on purpose, it was clear that they wanted to make things difficult for her the moment they saw her. Shirnianj was unwilling to talk to them. Without saying a word, she turned to leave. However, they had no intention of letting her leave so easily. They suddenly reached out and grabbed her arm. Why are you leaving? We really haven't eaten yet. Let's go together. Previously, when you were with Tang Xiao, weren't you quite polite to our brothers in class too? What happened now? Broke up? You don't even look us in the eye. So Miss Sure is actually so arrogant? Shirnianj could not take it anymore. She looked impatient. Are you crazy? Tisk, why are you scolding me? It's rare for us to meet Miss Sure. She usually takes out all her money to play games and doesn't have any money to eat. Is she planning to freeload on you? The man chuckled. Besides, I see that you're usually quite impolite to our class Suichi. Why are you pretending to be weak and pitiful? As expected, It had something to do with that bullsh asterisk T-class bell. What nonsense was she spouting outside again? She had almost forgotten about this person. How did it become her being impolite to Suichi? Sure, Nianj didn't want to talk to them anymore. She swung her arm. Let go. Seeing that her expression was calm, and neither servile nor overbearing. She was not overly angry or afraid. She really did not take them seriously. Originally, they only wanted to scare her as a warning to this spoiled young miss. Of course, they did not dare to do anything else. After all, no one had the guts to go against the famous Shida group in High City. Furthermore, they heard that Sure Nianj seemed to be quite close to Almighty Qin recently. If she had any relationship with Almighty Qin, it would be equivalent to having the Qin family behind her. It would be even more difficult to provoke her. Seeing that she was really not affected, the man wanted to spit a mouthful of smoke at her face. This time, Sure Nianj took a step back and dodged. She shook her arm and left. Although she was not affected, her mood was still not good. After going to the supermarket outside the school to buy a heat pack for Zhao Xiaoqing, she placed the heat pack on her table and went to the bathroom to wash her face. After washing a few times, she still felt the smell of smoke on her body. She hated it so much that when she returned to class and sat down, her expression was still not good. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Seeing that she had been sitting there, Zhao Xiaoqing gently poked her and asked, "What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood? Have you eaten?" "No, I'm not hungry," Sure Nianj replied in a low voice. In the end, Qin Sighting, who had just returned, happened to hear this. Qin Sighting stood in the aisle between the tables and chairs in front of her and glanced at her. He did not come over to sit down and turned to leave. 10 minutes later, he returned with a vacuum-packed sandwich cake and a bottle of hot milk. He did not say anything and only placed it on the table in front of her. She looked up and saw it, then turned to look at him. "Eat." He did not say much and only said these 2 words before sitting down. If she did not eat, her stomach would indeed hurt, but she did not want to tell him that she did not eat. She did not expect him to buy some simple food for her when he heard it. Chapter 1499. It was almost time for class, and it was indeed not convenient for her to go out to eat. However, looking at the small cake with a layer of fruit and milk, Sure Nianj's mood, which had been affected by the hooligans from class 2, finally improved. She ate the cake and drank the milk. She was just full. A piece of cake would not be very full. Her mouth was sweet, and her mood soared. The bell rang. She placed the milk bottle under the table. Seeing that she had finished eating and drinking, Qin Sighting asked her, "What happened at noon?" She thought of the hooligans she had met outside the school and shook her head. "Nothing." Qin Sighting looked at her face. "Unhappy?" "No." Sure Nianj changed the book for this class and smiled at him. "I really didn't." Seeing that she didn't want to say anything, Qin Sighting did not ask further. However, her mood did seem much better than before. Sure Nianj was not a person who liked to get angry. Under normal circumstances, as long as she did not touch her bottom line, even if she was angry, it would only be a matter of a few minutes. She had just eaten the cake and drank the milk. Not long after class, she forgot all about her anger. When she was no longer angry, she recalled Qin Sighting's words in the KTV last night. That's right. She still hadn't asked him what he meant. Aha. However, from that day onwards, every time she went out at noon, Qin Sighting, who usually spoke little, would ask, "Where are you going?" When she said that she was going to the school cafeteria with Zhao Xiaoqing, he stood up and let her out. If she said that she wanted to go out to buy something or take a walk with Zhao Xiaoqing, he would throw her a few papers or the questions she had misanswered in the previous mock exam. He did not let her go out and only gave her time to eat in school. He did not give her any chance to leave the school. Once she had to go out to buy something. Qin Sighting knew that she had to go out and did not stop her. He only said that he was going out too, and that it was on the way. As expected, she saw those hooligans outside the school gates. Their gazes shifted in this direction, and when they saw Qin Sighting by her side, they immediately stood obediently in the small square and smoked. None of them dared to come over to cause trouble, and no one said anything. Just like that, he coincidentally accompanied her out a few times. After more than a week, Nianj realized that those people were no longer blocking her outside. This half a month passed in a flash. It was getting closer and closer to the college entrance examination. Nianj felt a little tired from reviewing the papers every day. On Sunday, she still only had half a day off in the afternoon. She only wanted to go home and sleep. But on Sunday noon she suddenly died again. As it was almost time for school to end at noon on Sunday, the teacher gave them a list of books and asked them to borrow some books from the provincial library to review. She said that there might be questions in these books that were closer to this year's and previous year's college entrance examinations. Of course, it was just the teacher's intuition telling them what questions would be this year. It was not certain if there would be questions in the future, but since the teacher had already said so, they had to read these books. After all, she had been to the library with Qin Sighting. She asked him directly, "Are you going in the afternoon?" Qin Sighting said, "I'm free in the afternoon. I can go take a look." "Then can I go with you?" she asked. Qin Sighting picked up his shoulder bag. "Let's go." So straightforward. Without another word, Nianj quickly picked up her bag and followed him. 2. Chapter 1500. What about you? Are you sure? Qin Sighting did not answer but asked her. "Me, I've already confirmed it. Medical University. Anyway, the best medical university in our country is in High City. My grandfather happens to be a guest professor there. I don't have to be too far away from him. I can continue living in High City." Nianj smiled as she spoke. "Am I a little too content with the present? Even Hao Xiuxia's target is the various universities in Beijing, Class Monitor, and the others are targeting many universities in the country and abroad. I'm the only one who wants to stay in High City to study medicine." Qin Sighting was silent for a moment. He waved for the waiter to come over and fill the water. Then he suddenly said, "I'm sure too. Where do you want to go?" Nianj looked at him curiously. In fact, when she asked this, she was smiling on the surface, but her heart was sour. No matter where he chose to go, he would definitely be far away from her. It was really hard to say if she would have the chance to see him in the future. Life was not a television drama. Even if she could give up her dream of studying medicine and her grandfather's expectations for her, because she liked someone, her academic results could not keep up. Even though she had started working hard a long time ago, from the second year of high school to the third year of high school, most of her time was spent on supplementary classes. No matter what, it was impossible for her to catch up to Qin Sighting's footsteps. Therefore, she was more self-aware. Furthermore, her grandfather had been waiting for her to go to the medical university. She did like this clean young man in front of her. But her grandfather had been waiting for her to grow up and study medicine since she was a few years old. He even said that he wanted to see her become a famous doctor in her lifetime. Although the love of youth was precious, she could not disappoint her grandfather. Therefore, if there was really something that she could not force, she might as well not ask. She did not want to affect others' paths, nor did she want to make things difficult for them. Qin Sighting's future path would definitely be bright. Perhaps one day, they would meet again. At that time, they would still be sitting in the same restaurant with smiles on their faces. He just didn't know when that day would come in the future, and what kind of status they would have at that time. Qin Sighting did not answer. He only saw that her eyes lit up and dim, as though she wanted to say something but could not. "You will know," was his only answer. Yes, it was useless to know now. Even if she knew, it would only make her realize how far apart she was from him. She would know sooner or later, so what was there to ask now? Nianj quickly got up and went to the buffet area to get other food. Not long after she sat down to eat, her phone suddenly rang. It was her aunt who had just returned from abroad and passed by High City. She still had to go to a city in the north to do something. She said that she had bought some gifts for her to come out and take them. Her aunt's car happened to be nearby. If she went out, she would be back in less than half an hour. So she went straight to her aunt's car. After seeing her aunt handed her a bag. Inside were all kinds of food and toys that little girls liked, especially chocolate. When Shirniange was young, she liked to eat chocolate. When she grew up, it was fine. She didn't eat it often. She thanked her aunt and sat together to chat for a while before her aunt drove away, because she was in a hurry to catch a plane. On the way back, her phone rang again. He picked it up and saw that it was a call from Chin Sighting. She quickly picked it up. She felt that when she picked up the phone, her breathing rate changed. "Hello, Chin Sighting." Chin Sighting responded in a low voice. "You're back." I'm already heading back. I'll be there in a few minutes. I have to make you wait for me for a meal. I'm sorry." Shirniange quickly walked back. "All right, be careful." All right. In fact, she couldn't bear to hang up. It turned out that Chin Sighting's voice came from the phone like this. It was low, very seductive. Shirniange ran on the road and jogged back. When she entered the Japanese buffet restaurant, she was still panting. She ran to the table and quickly sat down, placing the small bag filled with food and gifts to the side. "I'm not rushing you. Why are you running?" Seeing that she was panting and her face was red, Chin Sighting frowned slightly. Shirniange chuckled. "I'm hungry. Hurry up and eat. I still have to go to the library later." Chin Sighting nodded. "I've eaten." That's right. She had been out for more than half an hour. There were many hot dishes that she could eat immediately. Thankfully, she did not order much earlier. Before she could speak, the waiter brought up the same hot dishes as before. It was obvious that Chin Sighting had ordered them for her after hanging up. She thanked him and quickly ate, not wasting any more time. After dinner, the two of them went to the provincial library. As expected, they met several classmates from the same world as them. Everyone listened to their teacher and came here to look for books. Although there was more than one revision book, there couldn't be too many. Shirniange began to worry. Did we come too late? What if the books teacher Zhao mentioned have already been borrowed? No. Chin Sighting walked in and headed straight for the bookshelves he had gone to the last time he came. Shirniange quickly followed. If he said he wouldn't, then he really wouldn't. In the end, the books that he had read the last time he came were actually one of the books that the teacher had mentioned. He accurately found the position of those books. They were placed at the highest point. Many students didn't see them when they were searching here. Chin Sighting directly handed them to her. "What about you?" she asked. "I saw it last time. I don't need it." After Chin Sighting finished speaking, he went to the bookshelf a few rows away. Shirniange thought that he was looking for other books, but she saw him pick up a medical book and walk over. He sat on a seat not far away. Seeing the book in his hand, Shirniange was surprised. She took her book and walked over. She wanted to ask something, but she felt that he must have found the German doctor's book she had read last time interesting. There was nothing to read now, so he randomly found the same author to write it. Although she had questions, she did not ask. She quietly sat down and began to read and revise. It was already late when she rushed over in the afternoon. After reading for more than 2 hours, it was already evening outside. Shirniange's neck hurt from reading. She raised her head and rubbed her nose. Then she narrowed her eyes and smiled at Chin Sighting, who had also raised his head. Chin Sighting looked into her eyes and did not speak. After a long time, she realized that he was still reading a medical book. She could not help but ask, "Is the book you're reading interesting?" Chapter 1502. Chin Sighting glanced at the things on the table. He did not accept them or ask anyone to take them away. He just sat down. Shirniange saw that he was in a good mood today. He actually did not return the gifts that those people had placed on his table. She took advantage of the atmosphere of the college entrance examination to sit down and whispered to him, "Almighty Chin, everyone is giving each other graduation gifts. We've been desk mates for so long. What are you going to give me?" In fact, she was really joking. She was already very happy to be able to see him every day. How could she dare to ask him for a gift? However, Chin Sighting did not answer immediately. It was raining outside the window. The June rain carried a hint of coolness into the classroom, causing everyone's heart to feel as though it had been cleansed, clean and clear. "All right, I'm just joking. I'm not thick-skinned enough to ask for a gift. Actually, after graduation, you just need to write me a message. I promise I'll keep it in my photo frame for a lifetime." After the college entrance examination, I'll give you a gift, Qin Sighting suddenly said, interrupting her. Shirniange didn't expect him to really give her a gift. For a moment, she didn't know if she should be ashamed or excited or both. In any case, when she met Qin Sighting's gaze, her entire heart floated up and then sank to the bottom. The gift after the college entrance examination was equivalent to the gift before they parted. In the future, would they have a chance to meet again? The day before the college entrance examination, the teacher said that everyone should go home to pack their things and rest for a day. They could revise at home or go out to relax. They would come back the next day to take the college entrance examination. Shirniange did not have the mood to revise at all. When she was free, she would still read those medical books. However, after resting for an entire day, she was actually thinking about whether Qin Sighting planned to revise at home or go out to do something. Thus, after school on the way back, she followed him and suddenly asked him, Qin Sighting, are you busy tomorrow? Qin Sighting turned to look at her and said, I'm fine. Her eyes instantly lit up again. After the college entrance examination, we will officially enter the ranks of adults. Tomorrow is the last day of our childhood. Do you want to go to the amusement park? Qin Sighting clearly did not understand her reason, but he only raised his brows. Seeing that he did not speak, she said frankly, I want to go. Hearing these words, Qin Sighting smiled lightly. All right. The rest day before the college entrance examination happened to be a weekend. When Shirniange went out, she found that there were many people everywhere. She followed Qin Sighting on the bus to the newly opened amusement park in the suburbs. There were always many people in newly opened places, especially those who brought their children there. The two of them sat at the back. She sat inside and Qin Sighting sat outside. The air conditioner in the car was very comfortable. Shirniange suddenly said to Qin Sighting, Can we change seats? Qin Sighting looked at her. What? Nothing, I just want to change seats. Qin Sighting did at Sighting Qin Sighting and said, Sighting at. Qin at Sighting at. After Shirniange sat outside, she raised her eyes to look at the woman in her 20s who had been standing by the side because there was no seat. She smiled at her kindly. Earlier, because this woman was leaning against Qin Sighting, she had deliberately pushed him down a few times. Although she did not go overboard, and only made people feel that the car was too crowded, Qin Sighting simply avoided her. After that, the woman simply placed her hands behind the back of his chair. She felt that she wanted to take advantage of some good-looking young man. Moreover, the woman was holding a cup of milk tea in her hand. Who knew if she would accidentally spill the milk tea on him, and then help him wipe his clothes and pants? Before that, she felt that it was better for her to sit outside with the woman. Seeing that she was sitting outside with that good-looking young man, and from the looks of it, they seemed to be in love, the woman's gaze turned awkward. She turned to the side and squeezed to the railing by the side, not continuing to walk in this direction. Shirniange retracted her gaze in satisfaction, and turned to look at Qin Sighting's understanding expression. We're almost there. Seeing that she was sparing no effort to protect him, Qin Sighting smiled and nodded. The place they were going to was equivalent to a newly developed tourist attraction in the sea. This place was very big, and there were amusement parks and other places worth visiting and eating. It was said that there was also a large ski resort inside, but it was closed in the summer and could only be opened in the winter. Although Shirniange was the young lady of the Shir family, her parents were too busy, and her grandfather was also busy. Uncle Qin and Auntie Xiang also had their own family and children. They were busy at the Shir family during work hours, and when they were free, they would definitely go back to accompany their family. Thus, in fact, she had never been to these amusement parks. Even if she came, she would only stop by. No one had specially stayed to play with her. In her heart, she was actually looking forward to it. There were quite a lot of fun here. She had originally planned to stroll around and go to the amusement park in the afternoon. Otherwise, she would not be in the mood to stroll around after sweating all over. After getting out of the car, she had been holding Qin Sighting's wrist. Qin Sighting did not let go. In fact, when there were too many people, she was almost squeezed to the ground, and he reached out to hug her back. This was the third time she had accidentally bumped into his arms. Shirnianj was already very calm. Although she was still a little happy, at least her face would not keep heating up. There are really so many people today. The weather is good, and it's a new scenic spot. Many people bring children, and the elderly. There's not even a place to sit, Shirnianj said as she walked in. You don't like crowds? It's not too late to change places, Qin Sighting said. There's no need to change. At most, I'll queue up at every place. It's fine. I can experience it. Shirnianj was still very excited. She then turned back and said, I remember that you don't like places with too many people. Today, I insisted on taking that direct train here. At that time, there were already a lot of people. Now it's crowded. You don't mind, do you? Qin Sighting said, It's fine. I didn't expect there to be so many people. Otherwise, I would have asked Uncle Qin to send us. Shirnianj narrowed her eyes and smiled. But it feels good to squeeze on the bar with you. I wonder if I'll have the chance to experience it together in the future. After saying this, she regretted it. For some reason, she felt a little shameless. What about her purpose of meeting him after graduation? But she did have this plan in the first place. Chapter 1503. In the end, Qin Sighting said there will be. Shirnianj's heart was filled with joy. Right now, she was in high spirits as she tugged at his wrist and continued walking inside. I heard from the people who came out earlier that there seemed to be a few places to see animals. There are also peacocks. Do you want to go take a look? She turned back and asked. Qin Sighting replied, All right. There were really peacocks and monkey mountains inside. She did not expect there to be pandas. She asked the staff inside and said that because the scenic spot was newly opened, they had invited a few pandas to support the scene. 3 months later, they would be sent back to their original cities. Today was the first day of the pandas' opening, so there were many people. Seeing so many people inside, Shirnianj frowned. She thought for a moment and said, Why don't we come back later? There are too many people here today. She really wanted to see, but she was afraid that Qin Sighting would feel that there were too many people, and that he would be impatient. However, Qin Sighting held her hand and led her into the crowd. It's okay. Let's go take a look. Shirnianj was led in by him. From time to time, she would look at the crowd around her, and then up at his face. Qin Sighting really did not have any impatience. It was as though he did not have the coldness and indifference that others often mentioned on his face. At the very least, in front of her, Qin Sighting was no longer as cold as when they first met. Actually, he was very warm. Once again, he brought her to avoid the crowd that was walking anxiously by the side. He held her in his arms, and finally walked to the visitation area inside. She could finally see the panda eating bamboo inside. She had been well protected along the way, and was not pushed by the crowd. At this moment, the two pandas inside suddenly snatched the same bamboo. Everyone was watching and laughing. The children patted the glass of the visitation area, and kept laughing and screaming. It was very noisy and lively here. Shirnianj lowered her head, and saw that her and Qin Sighting's hands were holding each other's. To be precise, Qin Sighting had been holding her hand. He had been holding her hand. Because the two pandas were fighting for the bamboo, their position had moved slightly. The crowd also moved in that direction. Once the crowd moved, they had to move as well. At this moment, Shirnianj did not even know how to move her legs. She only moved her fingers slightly, but Qin Sighting held her hand even tighter. Damn it, what was the point of watching animals play in an amusement park? What if she fainted here? She took 2 deep breaths, and tried her best to calm herself down. Her face should not be red right now. She was trying her best to remain calm, but how could Qin Sighting remain so calm? Did he really not have any distracting thoughts? Did he simply not want her to fall, and felt that it would be more convenient to walk together like this? Shirnianj let out a long breath. Forget it, she wouldn't think about it anymore. She gently returned his hand. The two of them walked hand in hand for a long time, until they walked out of the animal exhibition area, and headed for the amusement park on the other side. Only then did Shirnianj let go of his hand reluctantly. When she put her hand into her pocket, She felt that her palm was still warm. The main reason was that the space inside was small, and there were many people. No one noticed anything when they held hands. Now that they were out, holding hands like this would be too eye-catching. Furthermore, there didn't seem to be any reason to keep holding hands. She actually wanted to hold hands, but she felt that someone like Qin Sighting definitely wouldn't like others to keep looking at him. Two children ran over crazily. Seeing that they were about to touch Qin Sighting, Shirniange quickly squatted down to catch them. She blocked them in front of her and rubbed their little heads with a smile. Be careful when you walk. The two children glanced at her, grinned, and turned to run away. The tickets to the amusement park were interconnected. They could go to all the places they wanted to go. There were many people outside, and there were many people in the amusement park. However, at least there was a place to sit and rest. The weather was a little hot. There was a dessert and cold drink area in the amusement park. There was an awning below. Qin Sighting did not say that he was tired, but Shirniange was really tired and thirsty. She pulled him over to sit down and ordered a fruit smoothie and a small cake to eat. Of course, she ate almost all the cake herself. Qin Sighting did not eat much of the fruit smoothie. He asked for a bottle of mineral water. From this, Shirniange silently remembered that Qin Sighting did not like sweets. Zhao Xiaoqing sent a message asking where she was. Shirniange directly replied truthfully. Following that, Zhao Xiaoqing called. Oh my god, you're at the amusement park with Almighty Qin? Shirniange was silently a little happy. Not only were they at the amusement park, but they had even held hands and walked together for a long time. She smiled and answered. And are you revising at home? I'm not. I'm accompanying my mother out to buy things. If you're at home, I'll go look for you. However, since you're outside with Almighty Qin, I won't be a third wheel. No, you usually sit behind us. There's no difference. We're already used to being together. I don't want to. Watching the two of you show off your love, I'll die of jealousy. I'll accompany my mother to buy things first. All the best for tomorrow's college entrance examination. NN. All the best tomorrow. After hanging up the phone, Shirniange looked up at the person sitting opposite her. Qin Sighting was also looking at her. She didn't press the speakerphone button, did she? He probably didn't hear what Zhao Xiaoqing said about being a third wheel, right? Why aren't you eating? He asked. Shirniange glanced at the fruit smoothie on the table. This portion is too much. I was hot and thirsty earlier, but I can't finish so much. It's too cold. It's fine if I eat a few bites. If I eat more, my stomach will hurt. And then don't eat. Qin Sighting asked again. What's the matter? He was probably referring to the phone call she had just received. Thus, he probably didn't hear what Zhao Xiaoqing said on the phone. She also said that if I really can't perform well, I have to find another way out. I asked her if she wanted to study medicine, but she said that she would be so scared that she wouldn't be able to sleep well at night when she saw a replica of a human skeleton. She felt that she might not be able to enter the medical industry, so I didn't continue talking to her about this topic. Anyway, being a doctor is indeed very tiring. Indeed, not everyone likes this profession. Qin Sighting's expression was indifferent, and he did not say anything. Let's go. We haven't played any of the tickets to the amusement park in the afternoon. Shirniange was cool now and no longer thirsty. She stood up. She asked again. What do you like to play? Qin Sighting said. I've never been here before. I'm just taking a look. You decide. Everyone, try and see if you can comment. A few days ago, the comment section was under maintenance. No one could leave comments. Qing felt that she was playing alone. She was so lonely that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.